The human mind is a vast inner cosmos, an entire universe laid with hidden landscapes, unconscious shadows, and mysterious forces that shape our lives, even when we are unaware. We spend much of our time searching outward, hoping someone else will tell us how to live, what to feel, or how to heal. But what if the answer has always been waiting inside us? Carl Jung, the great explorer of the unconscious, left us a timeless truth. You cannot truly heal unless you make yourself your own priority. But what does that really mean, and how can we begin to live it? From the moment we are born, we're trained to look outward, to be the good child, the loyal friend, the responsible worker. We're raised to meet expectations, to serve others, to fit in, and above all, not to be selfish. Yet somewhere along that path, we lose something essential. You cannot give what you do not possess. You cannot offer love if you do not love yourself. You cannot bring peace to others if there is chaos within. You cannot guide anyone else if you do not yet know who you are. Jung devoted his life to studying the human psyche and found that within each of us lies a hidden realm, ruled by archetypes, instincts, and forgotten emotions that shape our thoughts and choices. One of his most powerful discoveries was the concept of the shadow, the part of ourselves we hide, suppress, or deny. Why do we reject these parts? We were taught that certain feelings are unacceptable, that anger is dangerous, that grief is weakness, and that sadness should be avoided. But Jung warned us, what you resist not only persists, but will grow in size. What you deny subdues you. What you accept transforms you. Prioritizing yourself in healing, then, is not merely about practicing surface-level self-care. It's not just about taking a day off, exercising, or eating better, though those are helpful. It's about something far deeper, a radical return to your own truth. It means confronting your inner world without fear, without masks, without seeking approval from others. It is the courageous act of facing your shadow, of looking into the wounds, the fears, the discomforts you've tried to avoid. And here lies the sacred paradox. When you dare to see yourself clearly, without filters, without judgment, without running, you finally begin to heal. But the truth is, this work isn't easy. We live in a world designed to distract us. We're constantly bombarded by noise, by notifications, comparisons, societal expectations, and relentless demands to become someone we're not. In our attempt to fit in, to be accepted, we disconnect from ourselves. And when we finally try to turn inward, we don't always find peace. We're often met with a terrifying silence, an emptiness so vast, we'd rather avoid it altogether. But here lies the paradox. That very emptiness is not your enemy. It is the sacred space where your true self begins to awaken. To prioritize yourself in order to heal does not mean ignoring others, nor does it mean becoming cold or indifferent. It means something far more courageous. It means you stop waiting for the world to rescue you and begin taking full responsibility for your own healing. It means you learn to listen to yourself, not just your thoughts, but your feelings without guilt. You give yourself permission to feel, to rest, to say no without shame. You begin setting boundaries without fear, and slowly you dare to be who you really are, without needing to apologize for it. Carl Jung taught that the path of individuation, the process of becoming your whole authentic self, is neither easy nor quick. It is a slow alchemy of transformation that demands we walk through doubt, pain, and inner crisis. But it is also the only path that leads to true inner fullness. Because when you finally allow yourself to be real, to stop denying any part of who you are, to no longer hide your shadow, to no longer run from what hurts, you discover something extraordinary. Healing doesn't mean erasing your pain. It means integrating it. And in that sacred act of embracing yourself fully, without exception, you find something more valuable than the approval of the world. The quiet, liberating joy of being your most authentic self. Deep in the unconscious, beneath logic, beyond surface thoughts. There exists a symbolic world of images, instincts, and patterns silently shaping our lives. Jung understood that true healing isn't about surface-level changes or forced positivity. It is a journey into the very core of our being, a return to the fragmented pieces of our identity we abandoned long ago. This isn't just an intellectual idea. It is an emotional and visceral process. It demands that we face our deepest wounds, those childhood scars we buried under layers of conditioning, unresolved trauma, and the weight of others' expectations. It asks us to confront the voices in our minds that whisper, "You're not enough. You don't deserve love. You'll never be free." But it is by bringing these voices into the light, by listening instead of resisting, that we begin to break their spell. That is when healing becomes real. And this is where Jung's profound concept of archetypes enters, the timeless architecture of the soul. Among his most influential contributions to psychology, archetypes are universal patterns embedded deep within the collective unconscious. They are not just ideas, but living forces, primordial images that have guided humanity since the dawn of time. You can hear them whispered through myths, echoed in ancient stories, revealed in dreams. They speak in symbols, metaphors, and sudden flashes of intuition, nudging us toward meaning, though we may not always understand their language. One of the most powerful of these is the archetype of the hero. The hero embodies the human impulse to grow, to transcend. But no hero begins as a savior. Every hero must first descend into the underworld of their own soul. They must walk through darkness, face the dragons of fear, and confront the shadow that dwells within. In real life, this means something strikingly simple, yet deeply uncomfortable. We cannot heal by avoiding our pain. We cannot outrun what haunts us. We must walk through it, feel it, understand it. Only then can we rise above it. But here lies the resistance. Most people fear this inner descent. They choose the familiar, even when it's painful. They stay in toxic relationships, endure soul-crushing jobs, cling to habits that drain their vitality, not because these things bring peace, but because change feels terrifying. As Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. If we refuse to face our inner conflicts, they will find other ways to manifest, through destructive relationship patterns, chronic illness, existential anxiety, or a gnawing emptiness that never leaves. This is why prioritizing yourself is not selfish. It is sacred. It is an act of radical devotion to your own evolution. True healing begins the moment you stop blaming the world for your suffering and begin turning inward with courage. Ask yourself, what patterns keep repeating? What wounds am I pretending not to see? What emotions am I bearing alive? Healing is not a straight path. There will be days when you feel strong and others when you feel like you've fallen backward. But Jung teaches us, nothing is wasted. Every detour, every breakdown, every dark night has meaning in your unfolding. Even suffering, especially suffering, carries within it the seeds of transformation because it is through pain that the unconscious reveals itself, not to punish you, but to awaken you. The wounds you dare to feel become the portals through which your true self returns. Many people spend their lives chasing answers in the outer world, in books, gurus, religions, and ideologies. And while these can serve as guides or lanterns in the dark, the only truth that truly liberates us is the one we uncover within. Carl Jung called this the process of individuation, the sacred journey of becoming the most authentic, whole, and undivided version of ourselves. But this journey demands that we strip away the masks, release the shame, and stop molding ourselves to fit the expectations of others. It calls for radical honesty, inner courage, and a willingness to live without apology. And this, of course, comes at a cost. Because the moment you begin to prioritize your inner truth over outer approval, you may find that some people no longer recognize you. You may encounter rejection, misunderstanding, or even solitude. But that solitude is not punishment. It is the price of authenticity. And what you receive in return is worth far more than what is lost: a deep, unshakable connection with your true self, a life rooted in integrity, and a freedom that cannot be taken by anyone. The unconscious is not empty space. It is a vast, inner ocean, brimming with forgotten messages, broken fragments of our soul, and ancient wisdom waiting to be remembered. Jung gave us a map, but the path is our own, and it can only be walked when we choose to prioritize ourselves, turn inward, and face, with humility, the raw emotional landscape we carry. Our emotions are not random, they are echoes of the past. Some clear, some buried so deeply that we don't even realize they're still shaping us. Yet they affect everything: how we think, how we love, how we respond to the world. Jung understood that we are not merely rational beings. We are vessels of forces that operate beyond the surface of consciousness, energies that quietly shape our fate, even when we think we're in control. One of Jung's most profound discoveries was the concept of the anima and animus, the feminine and masculine energies that reside within every soul, regardless of gender. These are not outer traits, but deep inner polarities. They influence how we relate to others, how we create, how we love, and how we experience wholeness. To heal emotionally, we must become aware of these inner forces, not suppress them, but integrate them. This integration begins when we make the conscious decision to stop searching outside ourselves for wholeness and instead turn toward the vast symbolic terrain within, where the forgotten parts of our being are waiting to be brought into the light. The anima, the feminine aspect within the unconscious of a man, reveals itself through his emotional life, his ability to feel, connect, and intuitively relate to the world around him. The animus, the masculine counterpart within the unconscious of a woman, shows itself through reason, structure, and decisive action. According to Jung, when these inner energies fall out of balance, we not only suffer inwardly, but we also begin to project that inner chaos onto the stage of our outer life. For instance, a man who has repressed his anima may find himself emotionally numb, unable to express vulnerability, trapped behind a fortress of logic that protects but also isolates. Meanwhile, a woman overwhelmed by an unbalanced animus may live in mental overdrive, constantly thinking, overanalyzing, pushing through life without pause, disconnected from her inner knowing. Emotional healing, therefore, requires integration, a conscious union between action and reflection, between feeling and thought, between doing and being. But this integration is not a task we can complete overnight. Jung taught that our healing is shaped not only through direct effort, but through the symbols, stories, and myths that live within us. These myths are not just ancient tales passed down through generations. They are living psychological blueprints that shape the way we love, suffer, dream, and choose. Each of us is unconsciously living out a personal myth. Some play the role of the savior, believing they must rescue others, even at their own cost. Others are caught in the myth of the martyr, believing suffering is required to deserve love. Many remain trapped in the prisoner's narrative, convinced that external conditions are permanent walls enclosing their freedom. But here lies the turning point. When we become aware of the myth we're unconsciously acting out, we gain the power to rewrite it. We are no longer passive characters in a script written by pain. We become authors of our own story. Jung believed the unconscious is not just a reservoir of wounds, but also a wellspring of unrealized potential, a creative force waiting to be awakened. Yet, this power is often blocked by the beliefs we absorbed as children. I'm not good enough. Love always hurts. Life is just survival. These thoughts become invisible cages, shaping our behaviors and expectations without our conscious awareness. They grow into self-fulfilling prophecies that define us until we dare to question them, and that is the first step toward true emotional healing. Not to run from these inherited beliefs, but to name them, confront them, and choose, courageously, to release them. This brings us to a vital truth: the sacred power of introspection. We live in a world addicted to noise, where distraction has become the default setting of the modern psyche. There is always something pulling at our attention. Social media, endless work demands, the next episode, the next task, all cleverly crafted to keep us outwardly busy and inwardly disconnected. In this age of constant stimulation, being still is almost revolutionary, and yet true healing does not happen in motion. It happens in stillness, in the quiet corners of the soul where we dare to be alone with our thoughts, without filters, without distractions, without pretending. Jung understood this profoundly. Through his method of active imagination, he created a bridge between the conscious mind and the unconscious. Rather than suppress the thoughts and feelings that rose to the surface, he welcomed them, allowing them to take shape as inner figures, images, sensations, and even voices. He did not judge them. He did not run from them. He listened, he watched, he engaged in dialogue. He discovered that beneath every emotion, even the most painful, there lies a hidden truth, a message longing to be heard. When we choose to prioritize ourselves, we give ourselves permission to return to this inner landscape. We begin to see how much of our life has been governed not by authentic choice, but by invisible forces, inherited fears, social expectations, unconscious programming. We start to realize that many of the decisions we thought were our own were actually shaped by others' voices, voices we never questioned. But everything shifts the moment we decide to reclaim our narrative, to no longer let our past, our wounds, or the opinions of others dictate who we are becoming. Change is not instant, but it is inevitable once we begin living from a place of inner truth. Relationships may fall away not because we failed, but because they no longer vibrate at the frequency of our evolution. Some connections will deepen, no longer built on need, but on mutual authenticity. Doors that once felt locked begin to open because we've stopped standing in our own way. But none of this is possible without the courage to put ourselves first, not in selfishness, but in sacred responsibility. Emotional healing is not a poetic wish or an intellectual exercise. It must become a living commitment, because, in the end, no one is coming to rescue us. There are no saviors. No external answer will fill the internal void. The only one capable of walking this path is you. The idea of prioritizing yourself in order to heal emotionally may seem simple in theory, but in practice, it is one of the most courageous acts a person can take. It is not merely about surface-level self-care, like taking a break or indulging in fleeting pleasures. It is a radical commitment to personal truth, a vow to honor your deepest needs, even when those needs challenge everything you've been taught to suppress. Jung understood that emotional healing is not a straight path. It is a spiral journey, marked by countless inner deaths and rebirths, each one peeling back another layer of the self, guiding us toward the hidden chambers of the soul. Along this path, perhaps the greatest obstacle is fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of change, fear of what we will discover once we stop drowning ourselves in the noise of the outside world. We've been conditioned to fear our own shadow, as if the parts of ourselves we've hidden away are shameful monsters to be eliminated. But Jung made it clear, what we ignore within us does not vanish. Instead, it gains power. Left unseen, the shadow becomes an autonomous force, shaping our decisions, our reactions, and our relationships without our awareness. The shadow is not merely the dark aspect of who we are. It is the repository of everything we've repressed in order to fit in, be accepted, or avoid pain. It holds our unspoken rage, our unacknowledged desires, our buried talents, and the passions we never dared to express. In this space we find the parts of ourselves that were silenced long ago, parts that ache to be seen, not condemned. True healing begins not by banishing these fragments, but by engaging with them, by listening, understanding, and making room for them in the house of the psyche. This is where Jung's concept of the self comes into play. The self is not the ego, not the polished identity we present to the world, nor the collection of roles we perform each day. It is something far deeper, the totality of our psychic being. the sacred meeting point of conscious and unconscious, where all that we are, have been, and could become finds unity. It is the state in which we are no longer split into masks, roles, and contradictions, but whole. To reach this state, we must undergo what Jung called the confrontation with the shadow. This is not an easy stage. It forces us to face uncomfortable truths, to sit with the fears we would rather escape, to witness the insecurities we've long buried. But paradoxically, this confrontation also reveals something extraordinary: our true power. Because, within the very wounds we tried to hide, lie the gifts we were born to embody, and only when we dare to embrace our fullness, light and shadow alike, can we begin to live from a place of authentic inner freedom. And yet, most people avoid this confrontation with themselves. They cling to the familiar, even if the familiar is filled with suffering, because at least it feels safe. They hold on to an identity shaped by wounds, by past trauma, by limitations, even if that identity has become a cage. They confuse pain with personality. They merge so deeply with their hurt that transformation feels like a threat to their very existence. But Jung understood a profound truth. Real healing does not happen by erasing suffering, but by transforming it, by understanding it, by letting it speak, by using it as the raw material of our evolution. Emotional pain in this view is not an enemy to be silenced, but a sacred messenger asking to be heard. It signals where love is needed. It shows us the places we've abandoned within ourselves. This brings us to the essential question: how do we begin? How do we stop being prisoners of old wounds and truly start prioritizing ourselves? The answer is not a one-size-fits-all formula. Each soul walks a unique path. But there is one universal beginning. The first step is always awareness. We cannot change what we refuse to see. We cannot heal what we continue to deny. Healing starts with brutal honesty, with the courage to face ourselves without filters, without justification, without the masks we've worn for survival. It means questioning our deepest beliefs, challenging the stories we've inherited about who we are and what we're allowed to become. It means stopping the endless search for external answers and beginning to trust the quiet voice within. Prioritizing yourself means stopping betraying your truth for the comfort of others. It means no longer postponing your joy out of fear of judgment. And when you take that step, you begin to notice what was once invisible: how you speak to yourself, how you hold or withhold your emotions, how much you've allowed yourself to feel, express, and create. You start to recognize that many of your emotions do not belong to you. They are echoes of generations before you, inherited pain, unconscious patterns passed down like heirlooms. And here lies one of Jung's most powerful revelations: the idea of the collective unconscious. We are not isolated beings. We are threads in a vast tapestry of ancestral memory, cultural conditioning, and shared psychic energy. Much of what we carry isn't just ours, it's the residue of our lineage, our society, our world. To heal, then, is not merely a personal act. It becomes a sacred offering to the collective. Every time you break a pattern, question a belief, or release a trauma, you send ripples through the web of humanity. You open a new path, not just for yourself, but for others to follow. You become living proof that a new way of being is possible. This is the deeper power of prioritizing yourself. It is not selfishness. It is not emotional detachment. In truth, it is the most generous thing you can do for others. Because only when you are inwardly balanced can you bring balance to the world. Only when you've tended to your own wounds can you stop projecting them onto those around you. And only when you have transformed your pain into wisdom can you finally stop repeating the same stories of suffering and begin writing something entirely new. And still, fear lingers. Fear of letting go of what's familiar. Fear of what might unravel when we finally dare to live from our truth. But Jung made something very clear. Fear is not a sign to stop. It is a sign that we are standing at the threshold of transformation. It is the guardian at the door of change, testing whether we're truly ready to leave the mental prison we've inhabited and step into the unknown landscape of possibility. When we feel fear rise, it does not mean we're doing something wrong. It means we're approaching something real. It means we're inching closer to the truth within us that has long been silenced by habit, expectation, or survival. And healing begins the moment we choose to look within, not with fear, not with judgment, not with justification, but with presence. Because healing is not an event. It is not a single moment of clarity or a destination we arrive at. It is a lifelong path, a sacred process where, each day, we choose to be a little more awake, a little more ourselves, a little more whole. And in this process, one question inevitably arises. What parts of ourselves have we abandoned along the way? Jung spoke of individuation as a journey of shedding, the gradual peeling away of layers imposed by others, so we might rediscover who we were before the world told us who to be. This path is rarely easy. From an early age, we're taught to shape ourselves to meet expectations, to shrink, contort, and perform for approval. In doing so, we trade pieces of our soul for belonging. Some of us sacrifice our sense of wonder, our playful curiosity, our freedom to make mistakes without shame. Others abandon their deepest dreams, tucking them away in order to earn love, safety, or recognition. But here is the truth. Those lost parts never truly vanish. They sink into the unconscious, like forgotten treasures buried beneath the surface, waiting to be remembered, waiting to be called back home. This is why so many people, even those who appear successful or stable, carry a quiet emptiness within. They may have built a life that looks complete from the outside, accomplishments, relationships, a place in the world, but something still aches. That ache is not weakness. It is not failure. It is the voice of the essential self, the part that was once left behind, now rising to be heard. And when we begin to listen, we begin to return, not just to who we were, but to who we are meant to become. Emotional healing, then, is not merely a release from the pain of the past. It is an act of sacred retrieval. It is the journey of returning to what once made us feel alive, to the soul-nourishing essence we abandoned when the world told us what was right. It is remembering what once ignited our spirit before logic and duty silenced our fire. It is the reclamation of the forgotten parts of ourselves, the passions we buried, the desires we dismissed, the dreams we traded to become who we were told we should be. But this reclamation does not happen passively. It requires deliberate inner work, an honest exploration of our feelings, our wounds, our longings. It demands the courage to face the unsettling truth that in many ways we have become our own jailers. We've told ourselves stories to justify our unhappiness, our inertia, our repetition of the same painful patterns. Jung knew that the unconscious is not our enemy. It is a powerful ally, but only if we dare to listen. To do that, we must learn its language, one written in symbols and spoken through dreams, through repetitive emotional patterns, through visceral reactions that seem to arise from nowhere. If we keep finding ourselves in painful relationships, in cycles of conflict, or in a restless search for meaning, it is not a coincidence. These are not random misfortunes. They are messages. They are the unconscious knocking at our door, asking to be heard. And yet, instead of listening, we often choose distraction. We fill our lives with noise, endless work, screens, obligations, not because we are too busy, but because feeling can be terrifying. But what we avoid does not disappear. It gathers. It intensifies. It begins to take form as anxiety, as depression, as chronic dissatisfaction that no success or approval can soothe. It may erupt as a crisis or as an inexplicable sense of being lost. And in those moments, we are offered a choice: continue to turn away, or finally turn inward. To prioritize yourself in order to heal means choosing the second path. It means allowing yourself to feel without fear, to witness your wounds without shame, to honor your experience without minimizing it. It means asking the questions we often avoid. What do I truly want? What truly brings me joy? What silently aches within me? This journey inward is not easy, but it is deeply transformative. As we reconnect with ourselves, we begin to see how many of our choices were shaped by fear, not love. We see how often we betray ourselves to avoid disappointing others. We realize that the life we've built may reflect who we were told to be, not who we actually are. And that realization leads to something essential: responsibility. Healing does not mean blaming others for our wounds. It means taking ownership of what we do with them now. We cannot change the past, but we can choose how it will shape us. We can carry pain like a chain, or we can turn it into fuel. We can use it to remain wounded or to grow wings. Jung often spoke of inner alchemy, the mystical process of transforming suffering into self, knowledge, darkness into wisdom, wounds into light. True healing does not erase pain, it gives it new meaning. It asks, not why did this happen to me, but what am I meant to learn from this? And when we ask that, everything shifts. We stop seeing ourselves as victims of life and begin to see ourselves as the authors of it. We discover that we are not defined by our pain, but by how we rise from it. And in that moment, we reclaim our power. But this isn't a one-time epiphany. It is a daily devotion, a conscious path of self-awareness, truth, and inner alignment. There will be days we doubt, days we want to return to what's familiar, days when fear whispers that safety lies in staying small. But every time we choose to honor ourselves, to act from authenticity rather than habit, we grow closer to our true self. That is the essence of healing, not a finish line, but a lifelong pilgrimage, a process of recovering the parts of ourselves we once abandoned, of integrating what once felt broken, moving forward, not from lack, but from wholeness. And with every step, we come to see that prioritizing ourselves is not selfish, it is a sacred responsibility. We live in a culture that rewards overgiving, overworking, and overpleasing. That measures our worth by how much we sacrifice. But this conditioning fractures us. Jung reminded us that transformation begins with inner truth, with the courage to stop seeking permission and to fully claim our well-being. Healing is not linear. Some days are breakthroughs, others feel like regressions. But what matters is not perfection, it is persistence. Every decision to choose yourself, no matter how small, is an act of radical self-love. Every time you say no to what drains you and yes to what nourishes you, you affirm your right to live authentically, to live freely, to live fully. Along this path, you will learn to set boundaries without guilt. You will learn to say no without explanation. You will walk away from what wounds you, not from cruelty, but from clarity. You will learn to trust your inner voice, to stop outsourcing your truth, and to remember that everything you seek is already within. Emotional healing is not a phase, it is a way of life. The commitment to becoming who you truly are. And the most beautiful part is this: when you heal yourself, you heal the world around you. You become a living example of what it means to love from fullness, to speak from truth, to move from consciousness. And in doing so, you give others silent permission to do the same, because in the end, the greatest revolution is the one that happens within. The decision to prioritize yourself, to listen deeply, to create space for healing, is the first step toward a life of freedom, truth, and soulfulness. And that is the true essence of this journey into the unconscious, not just to understand it, but to transform it into a wellspring of power, wisdom, and light. If something within this message stirred you, if even a single word mirrored your inner experience, I invite you to let your voice be heard in the comments. Have you encountered that soul whose presence feels like home, or are you still walking the sacred path back to yourself? Your story, however unfinished, may become the lantern in someone else's darkness, the very sign they didn't know they were searching for. And if someone close to you is silently struggling with the illusion that love must hurt, that self-abandonment is the price of connection, or that they are unworthy of peace, share this video with them. Help me reach the ones who need to remember. Real love does not demand that we shrink. True connection does not ask for sacrifice of the soul. And the most vital union we will ever form is the one with our own inner truth. Before you go, I invite you to subscribe and activate the notification bell. Here, in this space, we journey beneath the surface of things, exploring the hidden architecture of the psyche, the whispers of the unconscious, and how every relationship is but a mirror reflecting our personal evolution. If there's a theme, a question, or a wound you would like us to explore in future videos, leave it below. This space breathes because of you. Your voice is not only welcome here, it is essential. Thank you for showing up, not just to this video, but to your inner work, to the sacred labor of remembering who you truly are. And always remember this: when the right person appears, your soul will know, not through fear, but through peace. But until that moment, let your most intimate relationship be the one you cultivate within. That is the foundation, that is the home. And from that wholeness, all things real are born. Until next time, I'll see you on the path.